Hello all and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to see a very interesting topic where we will be understanding how exactly the enterprise level architectures is defined or designed for agentic AI frameworks. So in our previous videos we have seen how we can build different agent frameworks like sequential agents, group chat agents in order to solve a particular use case. That is from the technical perspective. You can define the number of agents that you want to use, or the sequence of agents that you want to call, how you are going to handle the conversation between agents. But when you think from the building a architecture from enterprise level perspective, then the things are different. You need to think from multiple aspects, and what are those multiple aspects? That is what we are going to cover in this particular video. So without wasting time, let's get started. So for understanding the architecture, let's take a simple use case. We will understand how we can build the architecture for a simple use case. Let's say your use case is you need to plan a meal, and this meal you need to plan for a user, and this with the help of your AI system. Now user will ask questions. Let's say user will say, my preference is veg and my budget is, let's say, under let's say 500 rupees. Please suggest me good hotels nearby me. So in those cases, right, our AI system will take those information from user and will recommend different hotels that are nearer to the user, as well as not only hotels, but it will also suggest the meal. Let's say if user preference is lunch, user is looking for lunch, then we will suggest the hotels that are serving the lunch in that particular period. We will also do the crowd analysis, right? Our agentic AI system will do the crowd analysis. It will check the cost comparison, correct? Then it will also find out the reviews, the hotel reviews, and accordingly it will suggest a good options for our user. So users are coming to our platform, and our platform will help the user by identifying or understanding these many parameters. There will be more to that, and then it will recommend the good options for the users. Now we want to build this particular AI system. So how exactly we are going to do that? So we are not going deep into the use case because our focus is to how focus is on designing the enterprise level architecture, right? So how many agents you want to use, what should be the sequence of agent, what should be the output written by each agent, that is technical things that you can define, right? Because you are the a developer of that particular application, so you can think of a multiple ways to build the agentic system. But apart from agents, right, what are the other services that you should think of? What are the other parameters that you need to take care while building these particular systems at enterprise level, right? So that is what we are going to see. So let's dig into the this particular AI part. So I have already prepared one diagram which will save our time. So let's say now in this particular agentic framework that we are building, now, whatever AI part that we have seen, this is our application. So it is this part, right? Now, on our platform, first of all, we will have a user interface on which our users will come and ask the queries, right? So we will have one system. In this system, it may be, let's say, built on React UI. Underlying, you might be using Python for backend, right? There will be some databases to store the data and all those details, right? So that is your system or a platform for user. This is your platform, and in this particular platform users will hit their queries. Once user hits the query, first let's say we will have a planner agent. So the task of planner agent to distinguish your complete problem statement into simple task. So what it will do is it will distinguish your task, like it will distribute the task. First, let's say it will call agent 1, in this case this particular agent, then it will give another task to agent 2, and it will similarly do the breakdown of task, right? And then it will decide which agents to call for each individual task. That is what your planner agent will do. Now let's say your agent 1 is, let's say, filter agent, right? So whatever user is asking, let's say user is asking the questions, hey, I am looking for a lunch, I am wage, and my budget is, let's say, less than 500. This is the question that user is asking. So what this filter agent will do, filter agent will first filter based on the user requirement. Then our second agents will do the, let's say, crowd analysis. This agent task is to identify the crowds. Third agent is to recommend hotels. based on the crowd analysis built based on the filter. Now, again, once this task is done, then the planner agent will take this particular information, the final recommendations. Then it will again call the, let's say these are your sequential agent, first sequential agents. Then you have, let's say, parallel agents. Parallelly, whenever this activity is going on, your planner agent will call, let's say this is your Zomato API. So from Zomato API, it will call the information of food. Let's say for these particular hotels, what are the food that they are serving? What is the lunch options that are available in each? Let's say this is your Google API. So in this Google API, right, it will get the distance of those particular final recommended hotel. Let's say here you have finalized 10 different hotels that are relevant for this particular user. And then for those 10 hotels, it will find the lunch options, it will find the distances from the user, and then you will have these tools and skills interface right here. All these APIs, let's say here you may have, let's say, MCP, model context protocol, which will hit to these hotel website, do the research, complete thorough research, and it will identify the reviews of these particular hotels. It may be another skill interfaces like it is going to the hitting to the Google and checking what are the reviews for these particular hotels. Let's say it will also understand and identify the history of these particular restaurants, when exactly it was open, how many customers that they have served. Based on that, it will take a final decision, and that decisions will be recommended to the user through guardrails. Now, in the guardrails, you will have guardrails in order to avoid, in order to structure your final response for users so that user will be able to easily read that particular information. Also, these guardrails will help you avoid the malicious content exposure to the users, because in your, let's say, reviews, right, you may be having some malicious reviews, some vulgar comments may be there. So your guardrails should filter out those comments and give the pure responses to the user. Because whenever you are thinking from enterprise level, right, it is very very important to focus on these content, because as an organization you don't want any vulgarous content into your LLM responses, right? You don't want any malicious content available into your responses. That way your user should not be hurt, and that is the reason, right, these guardrails are applied. Now this is your own decision. As a developer, you can decide on these. You can decide on the agentic flow, you can decide on the guardrails, you can decide on the which language models to use. Apart from that, right, as a enterprise, you should always think from a large language model perspective. Now, I will tell you why. Because whenever you are using a large language models, it is always associated with a cost, meaning there is always a cost factor associated with each LLM. Now, in order to do the filtration, you no need to use GPT-4 model. Your simple large language model can be able to handle this. So why are you wasting cost into that particular agent one in having GPT-4 model, let's say? Here you can have any open source model. You may plan to use, let's say, llama model, which is open source and freely available in the market. So you can, with the help of those models, you can have multi large language models into your multi-agent framework. That way, this will use, let's say, llama model, this will use, let's say, Mistral model, and the final recommendations model will be GPT-4. So this way, right, it will make sure that your cost is minimized, because as an organization you should always think from the cost perspective. Because if your cost to the application is always high, right, your business will start raising the questions that, okay, we cannot bear this much cost, because your agentic application is costlier than the revenue that we are getting, and that way your organizations will start facing the losses. And in order to avoid that, you need to find some middle ground, and that middle ground is like you can minimize your cost by looking into your agentic framework. So that is one parameter very very important whenever you are building a agentic framework into your organization. Always think from the cost perspective, and trust me guys, this is very very important. Always your business always looks into how much you are spending versus how much you are earning from the application. We call it as ROI, return on investment. So let's say if you are investing $10 in, let's say you are investing $10 a day into this particular applications, and if it is generating a revenue of $5, right, then meaning it is a complete loss to the organization. So always think how you can reduce these particular cost, and that is your first step whenever you are thinking from the building a agentic framework. Moving to the next. Now, let's say you have generated the final recommendation, you have given responses to the user. Always make sure that you capture the feedback, because currently, let's say whenever you are trying a practice projects, right, you don't think, or no one thinks from this particular feedback and learning perspective, because as a practice projects, right, we do not care with what should be the responses. If it is serving our normal purpose, that is fine, but we should always listen from the user. Whatever queries that users are, or problems that user is facing, we always should feed that back to our models, and we should retrain our models. We should readjust our models in order to serve the users with the right content and with the right services. So you should always think from these particular field, and this is going to be your, again, another important metrics whenever you are building a agentic framework at enterprise level. And let's say if you are giving any interview, right, trust me guys, if you explain the architecture at this level, right, you will be shortlisted definitely, because most of the time we have seen that if the time comes to explain an agentic project, people mostly focuses on this particular part. I would recommend not only focus on this part, focus on other things. How you have applied the guardrails, what are the challenges you are facing. Let's say your model were recommending some let's say vulgarous comments to the users, and we noticed that, and that's where we took these corrective actions, and we have added guardrails to fix that. Now our model is, if there are any malicious or if there are any vulgarous comments that are put by the users into the application, then we are filtering in on the hotels, then we are filtering that, and then only we are showing the results to the user. So it means, right, like that way it gives more confidence for your interviewer, and your interviewer will also be surprised that okay, you are not only building the agentic framework, but you are thinking from the architecture perspective. So always start with this particular mindset, that okay, whenever you are explaining any project, think about the architecture as well, how exactly your architecture should be. And trust me, whenever there is a new use case coming into your organizations, and you are the developer, a lead developer working on that, and they have asked you to come up with a plan, right, and if you go ahead with this particular plan, right, showcasing all these parameters that we need to take care, your management will be impressed. And trust me guys, even though if you are not working on individual pieces, but your management will be impressed, and definitely it will help you in your growth. Okay, so moving ahead, now this part we have already seen. Now let's jump into the backend part that is happening behind the system. Now your user is interacting with your application, and all these things is happening, that is completely fine. But what is at the back? So for example, let's say this is your interface that user is using. Let's say at the right hand side, right, you have these particular chat history, correct? Here we maintain the chat history, and in your GPT-4 model also you might have seen that here you have, let's say, message to put, here you have message, and here you maintain the chat, and also you maintain the conversation history. Now from the memory perspective, right, you should always think, if I'm going to build a, let's say, chatbot, what is the backend that I need to make sure that we are capturing all the details? Let's say first the chat memory, this particular memory. Let's say this first conversations, you should maintain the conversation chat memory. Second one, user profile. We should understand the demographic of this particular user. So next time when this particular user is again coming back to our platform, we know the user profile, and that's the reason you need to maintain the user profile. So after chat memory, we should think of user profile as well. In user profile, you should remember the username, right? The personal details of the user, correct? Then like the age of users and all those information, right? Demographic information, which is required to recommend, because let's say if you are recommending hotel to the 25-year, let's say, men versus, let's say, 45-year woman, right? There will be different choices for those two in order of their food, in order of their food preferences. So you should always capture these informations. You should have that user profile handy with you. Then you should think of conversation state as well. Let's say here you have conversation state. These many conversations have happened. User may want to go back to your previous conversation and start the chat again. And that is what these options are available in ChatGPT as well, right? So similarly, you should think of how you are going to maintain a conversation state as well. So we have taken an example of chatbot to understand these memory states, but your applications can be anything, right? It can be a whole full-fledged applications, not only the chatbot. You need to make sure that you are focusing on the memory layer. So I hope the memory layer is clear. And again, for these memories, right, you need to find out the right databases. You need to think of what is the right structure of storing these particular information and all other details, right? Then a very important phase comes whenever you are building architecture is focusing on observability and analytics. Now, as you all know that your business folks, right, they doesn't care what underlying technology that you are using, whether you have applied the guardrails or not, which LLM model you have used, they don't care. What the business stakeholders care about is only the analytics dashboard that you are building, so that your business stakeholders always look at the different dashboards that you are building in order to showcase the application, how exactly your application is behaving. In that, you may be showing the number of sales that you are gaining. You may be showing the number of users that are churning out, right? Then also you may be adding a information like the different profiles. You are showcasing the pie charts and all that information, right? So that is what you need to think from the observability and analytics perspective, because this particular part is always going to be in focus for our uh, business stakeholders, and they will keep looking into these particular dashboards. And that is the reason, let's say you may have analytics engineer into your team, which will focuses on building these dashboards, which will keep capturing your growth, your KPIs, like KPIs meaning key performance index. It will keep capturing those details so that your stakeholders are always reviewing those reports, and accordingly they can suggest the modifications. So this is again a very important layer, and if you as a architecture, you should always think from this particular layer as well. Now, what should be the KPIs? What are the other details, right? It is going to be the completely different tree diagram for this, right? You no need to worry about that, because let's say you may be having an analytics engineer which will take care of that. Or if you want to do that, right, then you can start building those KPIs, right? You can start asking the questions to the business. Okay, what should we capture? What should be our end goal from this particular application? Let's say in this case, you want to capture the number of users use the particular applications in a week. You may want to capture what is the total sales received in a week. How many users only logged into the application but they haven't used the application, so that you can keep sending notifications to those users, right? So those KPIs you can keep capturing. Then, and that is the reason this particular step is very important. Moving to the governance and risk compliance. Now, as a architecture, you should always think from the risk and compliance perspective, because in this particular case, right here, your user can ask any questions, and in order to avoid those malicious content, right, you can always have a guardrails here, or you should always test your application with the help of jailbreaking prompt, right? Because jailbreaking prompts are nothing but the prompts which will help you test your application, whether your application or whether your LLM is responding to the malicious content or sexual content or not. So it should not happen that user is asking any, let's say, sexual content, and your model keep responding to that particular sexual content, right? That should not happen. That so you should add those jailbreak components. Then from the risk and compliance perspective, let's say if your user is uploading any file, right, you should have restrictions over that file. User should not update any malicious file into your system, or else your whole systems will be corrupted. So that again you need to think from the risk and compliance perspective. Again, from security perspective, we may cover that into another video, separate video. But yeah, that is again a very important point that you need to think whenever you are building the agentic framework. Coming to the governance, right now, in governance, you need to define what should be your database that in which you are storing your data, right? What should be your structure of storing the data? And this structure matters a lot, right? Because you will be ending up storing multiple different formats of data. There will be user data, there will be hotels information, there will be the API information, right? There will be these crowd informations, there will be these user demographic informations. So you need to define this structure, and also you need to make sure that this particular database, what is the right source of database that you are choosing, then whether this database is scalable or not. Because tomorrow, let's say currently you are serving to 100 users, and next month exponentially your users are using and it went to, let's say, 1 lakh users, right? Then your database should be capable to handle those 1 lakh users, right? It should be able to store that data for those particular users. Also, you need to think from scalability of your large language model perspective as well. That is where comes into the governance. Let's say currently your LLM is, for example, only taking, let's say, 8K token per minute, right? But what if tomorrow you are serving 1 lakh users, right? So you should be having a mechanism where you can divert or distribute, let's say, 8K users to each model, LLM model. So similarly, you should have multiple models to serve 1 lakh users. So out of 1 lakh users might be, let's say, 300 users are using the applications at a time, right? So sorry, 30,000 users are using the application at same time. Then in that case, right, you can have 8K LLM distinguished 30,000 users, so that your LLM will not break, as well as your user no need to wait for the LLM to respond, because your LLM will start raising the token limit reach errors. And how you are going to handle that, right? That is what you need to think from the governance and risk compliance perspective. Coming to the last part, that is the deployment and identity management. So here you need to play the role of DevOps. Like if you are having a DevOps team into your organization, well and good, that will mostly take care of the deployment. But again, as a AI engineer, you should always suggest your recommendations, because the deployment of AI applications can be different than your normal software development cycles. And in those cases, right, let's say, for example, now you have LLM models, right? Your LLM models are, let's say, hosted on Azure, for example. So you should think of a, let's say, Azure DevOps deployment, correct? Then you can decide what are the services that are required. Let's say you may want to use a web app services, or is it going to be the Kubernetes based application, or the we can call it as cluster basis application. So these things you need to think as a AI engineer. You should always think from this perspective, because you need to think from the scalability of your application. Because let's say, as we explained here, if your user base is going to increase exponentially, so you should have a scalable solutions available with you that will take care of serving the multiple users at a time. So as a DevOps engineer or as a AI engineer, you should think from this perspective as well, how you are going to scale your application. And from identity management perspective, you need to make sure how you are going to take care of logging of your user, right? How your user is going to log into your system, correct? How you are going to reset the passwords, right? What are the restrictions that you are going to add? So those parameters you need to think from the identity management perspective. And not only this, but so that is what, like, building agentic framework is not easy task. You need to think of a multiple personas, you need to think from a multiple perspective, multiple parameters are there, multiple services are there. So that is the reason, right? As a AI engineer, you should be aware about these. At least you should be aware about what are the underlying architecture that we should use, what are the different services that are required, and what are the different tools and the backend services that are required in order to run the particular applications. Because only building the agentic frameworks and defining the sequence of agent doesn't solve your problem at enterprise levels. You need to think from these multiple perspective. You should be you should be brainstorming these ideas with your colleagues. That's how you should come up with a, then only you will be able to come up with a good architecture for your project. And again, in the deployment, you should also focus on how you are going to release your deployments, how you are going to build a CI/CD pipelines, right? Continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines. Because let's say today you are working on version 1.1, and tomorrow you want to release version 1.2. How you are going to release that easily or feasibly to the users without any hassle? So that is what you are going to define in your deployment cycles. So yeah, I hope I have tried to touch to each and every point, but there is lot to it, and I felt a bit overwhelmed while explaining, because there are too many details to cover into the architecture, right? On single topic, there can be a completely different tree diagram, right? Let's say if you think from let's say deployment perspective, right? There will be a different tree diagram that we can build, and we can have a separate hours and hours discussions on that. But yeah, as a high level, I have tried to cover these things. If you really want me to go into the deep and touch to each and every point, please feel free to let me know into the comment section, and drop your queries into the comment section if you have any. And yeah, hope this was very helpful for you, and we'll see you soon in the next interesting video. Thank you for listening me till the end, and have a nice day, and thank you so much.